The motion before the House tonight is, this House has no confidence in Her Majesty's government. For almost 2 centuries, we have debated this traditional motion. A motion best represents the Union's courage to question and challenge the establishment. I now call upon the first speaker, the chair of Consultative Committee, Warr, Regent's Park College, to propose the motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. And may I say how nice it is to be back, to see the chamber full, the gallery full and open again. Welcome, friends. Welcome, freshers. I hope you enjoy yourself. And I repeat statements that I've heard across the years of no-con speeches, which are, everyone remembers their first no-con. I certainly do. Some are more memorable than others. 2019 certainly was. But Mr. President, it is fitting that you are the first no-con pres in 2 years. Our term card, for example, PPE, the word PPE, has only been seen more on dodgy government contracts. And more than this, Mr. President, I hope that you take note of what not to do from the proposition tonight, as you contemplate the next stage of your inevitable political career, having taken the PM's route to the presidency of the Union already. Freshers, the President is the epitome of if at first you don't succeed, try and try again. But I'm not just here to introduce the President and to talk about how nice it is to be back. It falls on me to introduce the opposition to you tonight. So speaking first, the Treasurer, Arjun Bhardwaj. Arjun was worried this evening, and he'd messaged me in advance, saying that he was going to be too roastable, and what might I say about him? Luckily for him, he's too boring to be roasted. But on purely a note of transparency, I wouldn't be too sure when he says he believes in the government. After all, he believed in his own presidential bid until this summer, when an investment bank managed to buy him out. Secondly, we have the Right Honourable Sir Geoffrey Cox, a Conservative MP for Torridge and West Devon, who was Attorney General until 2020. We also have the Right Honourable Robert Buckland, the Conservative MP for South Swindon, who was Lord Chancellor until the September reshuffle. But no, ladies and gentlemen, this is the no-con debate. The theme of this evening is not just sacked law officials by Boris Johnson. And speaking last for the opposition, we have the Right Honourable Jacob Rees-Mogg, Leader of the House of Commons and Lord President of the Council. We ought to congratulate him on becoming President in some capacity, since he was not so fortunate in these buildings themselves against Damien Hirst. But now, no more, that was enough. I've already pushed the limit, I think. So firstly, I want to talk about what confidence is. Last time I was here, I debated against artists about art. This time I'm debating about politics with politicians. As an English student, I'm really starting to push the envelope on my transferable skills. So I want to talk about words. I'm going to talk about words first. Because we claim we have this debate every term, or every year, right? And we talk about what confidence is in the government, but we don't talk about what confidence itself means. We take it for granted that it means something along the lines of, we would vote Tory or we'd vote Labour, or maybe in some other world, we'll vote Lib Dem. However, I think that confidence itself needs to be defined. I think you're voting for something firstly. An opposition will demand a counterfactual right from us, that we have to say that a Labour government would be better. I don't think that this is true for a few reasons. They're going to tell us, at least the Conservative government isn't Farage. At least it's not the Lib Dems. At least it's not the coalition. Whatever they're going to say to us, I think that is unfair. The motion is not this House would vote Conservative or this House would not vote Conservative. It's confidence, and that is something distinct. It is something between this House would vote Conservative and this House has faith in the Conservatives. Confidence is positive. It is not, in fact, oh, I would preferentially vote against them. And I think that that's something really important to distinguish between when we're setting up this debate. I think that the burden of prop is not to prove that Labour would be better, although some on the bench will say this. I think it is enough on our side to not buy into the Conservative government, to not think that we wouldn't want them to fight our corner, that we don't think that they're going to, or we think that they, in some cases, might not represent us. That is all we have to do on this side. And why is this? Well, I think firstly, the most important thing to establish is what is a Conservative government? And it's largely empty rhetoric at the moment. It's levelling up, it's building back better, and it's getting Brexit done. But does anybody actually know what this means? It's not a slate name. We actually need to know what this stuff translates as. It is easy, ladies and gentlemen, and I want you to consider this. It is easy to have faith in these words. It is easy to have faith in populism until it's time to get it done and we don't see any change. We don't see anything happening. We've had the slowest G7 COVID economic recovery. And the religion of the NHS that has been established during the pandemic due to a very successful, albeit very successful gamble on vaccines, while 7.5 million people to this day languish waiting for NHS appointments. Instead, what do we have? So we don't have these promises being fulfilled. And instead, we see scandal after scandal. We see Cameron, we see Hancock, and we have Cummings. It wastes time, and it's embarrassing, not only to the individual that presumably is, put across the pages of the newspapers that we read, but it's embarrassing to the party, and it's embarrassing to the institution that we call government. We deserve better, and that is why you should vote prop. But more on this, and more on who we are, and who should have faith. So it depends who you are. This House, in particular, should vote in favour purely on the fact that we are young and that we have been utterly ignored by the government. For the entirety of the pandemic, we have heard nothing from them as to what university students would get back. That is why you should vote prop. But also, if you're a woman with misogyny recently ruled out as a hate crime because the government doesn't know even where to start, you should vote proposition. And thirdly, a government who put faith in Cressida Dick and governmental institutions that say that they are there to protect you until they're not. And if you're an ordinary member of the public with possessions, for example, a car, and you think, well, I can't go and drill oil, and I can't go and refine oil to make my own petrol. But I have my car, I pay my road tax, and I would quite like to drive my car. Maybe the government will give me something that will allow me to do this. And then, because of a sequence of blunders, the likes of which we haven't seen since the Callaghan era, you cannot drive your car, or you have to sit in a queue for hours and hours and hours. The government is no longer providing for you. And worse than this, even if you voted Conservative, they do not care. The government, with higher taxes, is antithetical to Conservative principles. A bigger government with higher taxes is even more antithetical to Conservative principles. It shifts, at best, the Overton window, if, as promised, it is for short-term purposes. But these promises of short-term higher taxes actually mean nothing because they broke the promise in the first place. And I don't want to talk for too long about international policy, but it is not conservatism to not preserve our world standing, the Union itself, nor to further beholden us to the US. Aside from the international relations of it all, it was shameful to leave people in Afghanistan to die for their work aiding British forces, and the government let them down in doing so. Ladies and gentlemen, that I want you to think about tonight is that this is especially true when it is our nation that they don't represent. When it was Trump and Biden's posturing over a date to leave that got us into this whole mess in the first place, and that the Taliban had themselves made it clear that they wouldn't take Kabul by force. Where is their mandate? Vote proposition. And if I haven't done enough yet, if these groups of people, betrayed by the government, still seem a little bit nebulous to you, if they still seem a little bit distant, you can't picture yourself in those shoes, and they still seem a little bit irrelevant to your personal life, then fine. If you somehow don't yet fit into one of these groups, either passively ignored or actively betrayed by the government, then I want you to consider this. When might you be? And do you have confidence that you won't be? If so, lucky you. If not, vote in favour. Thank you.